Ambassador Hadiza Mustafa and Ambassador Adenike Ukonga. Just as worthy of our gratitude are those who have made the talk fest we are having today top of the public lecture calendar offering in the country. Our past chairmen include heads of state, General Yakubu Gowon, President Olusegun Obasanjo, Chief Joseph Sanusi, former governor of Central Bank, former Governor Babatunde Fashola, and speakers including President Kagame of Rwanda and George Okonwe of Liberia, U.S. Congressman Jerry Weller, Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, Vice President Yemi Oshibajo, Professor Ibrahim Gambari. Such other programs, such as the Young Entrepreneurs Training Program, YETP, the Nigerian History Series, and the Youth Bootcamp, are ample selections from what underlies the impact God enabled us to have. We're indeed truly grateful to all these people. In my time of full work as a professor at the College of Medicine, University of Lagos, my goal is to enhance smiles. And I find that the many CVL programs do put smiles on many faces. I feel that as a double-barrel achievement. And so on that note, I once again warmly welcome you all and wish us all a very enlightening and fulfilling day. Thank you very much.
Special sense of appropriateness of this moment. Today is a time of Thanksgiving, it's a time for stock taking. But in taking stock, it is important to recognize that there is good and there is bad in this world. But our purpose is what really matters. Our purpose is to be co-creators with God, moving creation towards its perfection. And all the effort that has come through in trying to run all the programs that CVL has run, it's about how to make for a better world so that those who come after us will have a more noble humanity. And in going through that this morning, I want to say that my remarks are written down in this little magazine brochure that is with you, and you can read it at your leisure. There's plenty to read in it. Actually, this is a collector's item. Please keep it and read every word that is printed there. But really, truly, what I wanted to focus on is that in spite of all that seems bad, there's so much good that has been done in this country. And some of those who have done that good are in this room. And we want to salute them. I take an example, a very simple example. There's a book that I have just written. It took me 45 years to write that book, believe it or not. Yes, I've written many books. This one started getting written when I was a young graduate student. It was completed only a few weeks ago and will be upgraded in less than 4 weeks from now because it's all happening so quickly. Our country, and Professor Ubu will speak to that book in a few minutes, but our country has been challenged not because people are wicked. It's challenged mainly because people are ignorant and they don't make the effort to learn enough to do what's good for even themselves. The many people we think are horrible people who will find out that what they thought they were doing in self-interest or for selfish reasons actually is loading the gun and shooting themselves in the foot. but they are not knowledgeable enough to realize that's what they are doing. And that's what the big tragedy of the Nigerian condition is. A very simple opportunity, but let me just take an opportunity to say thank you to many who have done their work well. Tribute to men who have been shining light, like Chimemeka Anyaoku, for example. This country has depended on oil and gas, for example, for a long time. The biggest success as enterprise goes in this country, part of our continent, it's a company called Nigeria LNG. That company may not have happened if someone like Isoma Philip Asiodo, who is sitting here, did not start a certain process. But even more so, it would not have happened if somebody like Don Etiebet had not done some remarkable things. And there's a case study I've written on that is in the book that we're going to present today. This is the most successful company. Anybody who disputes it can challenge me in our country. And it's a government partnership with private sector. The possibilities of Nigeria are infinite if we could just think a little bit. Put on the patriot's garb. Put on the garment of love. Because leadership is all about love. If you can't love, you can't lead. To love is to lead. Our goal really is to build a civilization of love. If we can build it, we will have a great country. We will be a successful people and we'll have peace. Thank you. Welcome.
Humility, gentility, and action. I used to visit him when he was the governor in a cottage house, he with his beautiful wife. And it was there that he developed and built the new Akwa Ibom that you all see. Architect Obom Victor Atta is the architect of the new Akwa Ibom. And then he did so well that today you saw the other governors who consolidated and replicate what he has done. Sir, you are welcome and thank you very much for what you have done to the people of Akwa Ibom. And we are so proud of you, sir. Thank you very much. Please, another round of applause for him, please.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you. Today we have come to launch a book that I believe will provide solutions for some of the problems that we have always had opportunity to analyze. But before we do that, we are going to have a lecture. And the topic of the lecture is democracy, governance, and national performance, the mutual relationship. Within the lecture, we are expected to discuss power, politics, public process, and performance. And I would like to add people, because all of these are aimed at getting us a better country, a better people in the world, particularly in our country. We have always had analysis of our problems, but sometimes we shy away from preferring solutions. And when those solutions have been brought forward, we are not able to implement them. Maybe the time has come for us to realize that unless we take some positive action, nothing will happen. We'll continue to grumble and the situation will only get worse. It is not my place to provide the lecture today, but I know that in politics, perhaps it is in politics that the saying that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely is very true. It is in politics that absolute power will corrupt to the point that, in fact, the person exercising the power does not know his excesses anymore. He takes it as the norm. And that sort of absolutism has no place in democracy. So today, we must concentrate on democratic principles and insist that our country follows them. And of course, the primary basis of democracy is elections. We have to find a way of getting our elections right. Unless and until we are able to put the people we want in office and able to remove them when we are dissatisfied with their performance, we will remain where we are. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my hope and my expectation that both the book and the lecture will give us the solution to some of the problems we want to solve in this country. Thank you very much for coming.
So welcome, and I'm very pleased to be here. In fact, this is a homecoming for me. It's been a few years because of COVID and other interruptions since I've been in action for the country, and who have given so much to the political and economic advancement of Nigeria, because some of what I'm going to say is quite critical of developments in the country, and we need to appreciate that there are ways forward and people who can bring it forward. So let me begin by making a few remarks. Let's see if we can do this. Does that work? This is not working. Okay, there we go. Let me see if we can begin with a few remarks on questions of democracy, development, and I'm going to raise the issue of violence in Nigeria. These thoughts are prompted by a central puzzle that's increasingly been apparent in recent years. There we go. A central puzzle that has been increasingly apparent in recent years. Nigeria has achieved a political milestone. The Fourth Republic has endured as a civilian electoral regime, and indeed the longest regime of any type in the nation's post-independence history. We have just gone through a 7th election cycle since 1999 with a constitutional transition of government, and in the history of the Fourth Republic, a peaceful turnover from one presidential incumbent to another and from one ruling party to another. Democracy has been more resilient in Nigeria than many of us would have expected if we think back 25 years. And yet, Nigeria has also become increasingly violent in the past 2 decades, with multiple insurgencies, communal conflicts, land disputes, and widespread criminal activity. It is fair to say that the country now faces a general crisis of security, as government cannot provide basic protection for much of the population or territory. Why is this so? The current dilemma was not inevitable. During the democratic transition, for which I was privileged to be here during those very hopeful founding elections in 1999, Nigerians looked forward to political freedoms, democratic representation, and a great possibility for shared prosperity. Conflict seemed to be a symptom of the corruption and unaccountability of military rule, with democracy as an attractive possibility for greater peace. And there were many reasons to share this optimism at that time. Comparative experience around the world tells us that democracies can be more successful in meeting popular demands, in allowing for political choice, and in providing options for negotiations and compromise. The world's strongest democracies are also among the world's most stable countries. Other large federal democracies have seen episodes of conflict resolution and greater stability after grappling with their own periods of intense unrest. India had a great deal of turbulence in the 1980s and 90s from insurgencies, political violence, and regional clashes, religious clashes, yet violence has been trending downward in India steadily for 25 years. Indonesia had a huge upsurge in conflict, a secessionist movement, and terrorist challenges at the time of their 1999 transition, the same year as Nigeria. Yet within a few years, they had achieved much greater stability. South Africa experienced intense political violence during the time of the 1994 transition, yet conflict subsided rapidly after the founding elections that brought Nelson Mandela to office. In Nigeria, we have seen instead an escalation and widening of violence across the country. And I'm just going to review what is probably very clear in most people's minds, but we should recall how these things have unfolded. Consider the key episodes of insecurity over the past decades. At the time of the political transition, we had a flurry of local conflicts in Lagos and Kano, Kaduna, Shagamu, Ile-Ife, Modakeke, Kafanchan, and other spots. When governors in the northern states expanded Sharia codes in many of the 12 of the northern states, we saw religious tensions escalate. Then beginning around 2004, we began to see an insurgency in the Niger Delta with the Niger Delta People's Volunteer Force and then the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta. This was contained through an offensive and through an amnesty in 2009, but at exactly the same moment, unfortunately, we began to see an upsurge in violence in the north with Boko Haram. And that has been complicated by the emergence of the Islamic State West African province. Then, after 2016, we see an escalation of the herder-farmer conflicts. At about the same time, there is a revival of the new Biafra movement, and there is violence in the eastern states. And now, certainly since 2016, 2017, we see growing criminality and banditry across the country. So it's useful to think again, just remind ourselves how these things have unfolded in different phases and different places. So the question then becomes for us, how do we account for this history? Violence and conflict in Nigeria are not driven by a single group. They're not driven by a single grievance, a core division, or a simple underlying problem such as poverty and resources. There are many different types of instability unfolding around the country. So we need to think that perhaps there is a more general problem of political inclusion, government legitimacy, and economic attainment for large parts of the population. The problem of security in the Fourth Republic is a problem of democratic incorporation and state performance. Oops. There we go. So I want to make 3 quick points and then conclude, because when the speaker says to conclude, this is everybody's favorite part of the speech. But I do want to make these 3 points quickly. First, the nature of the elite democratic bargain in the Fourth Republic has worked against broader representation across the Federation. Secondly, this same bargain has not fostered adequate economic development and broad-based economic growth, what we generally call shared prosperity. There is a severe democratic deficit in economic development in the Fourth Republic. And third, a divided elite and a marginalized population have turned too often to violent tactics in the struggle for resources and for identity. So let me quickly review each of these points. The Fourth Republic represents an historic bargain. Recall the 3 grand bargains in Nigerian history. The first was the independence bargain of 1959. It led to the First Republic, which unfortunately and tragically ended in military intervention and civil war. The second grand bargain at the conclusion of the Civil War was a focus by military and civilian elites to maintain national unity. That led to federalism, and it was facilitated by oil revenues in the first oil boom. We are now in the third grand bargain in Nigerian history. the Fourth Republic. After 40 years of failed democracy and military interventions and predatory military rule, elites agreed in 1999 to try to implant a durable democracy. This democracy has been resilient. And this is what is critical about the current moment. But the third bargain has lasted for 25 years, but still it has contained important flaws. Much of the bargain for the Fourth Republic has been negotiated by the three central minority groups from the north, from the southeast, from the southwest, who have dominated politics since 1959. The idea of the power shift, the idea of zoning, these were essentially bargains between the three big groups. Federal character adds some token inclusion, but many minorities are not in the tent. What are the central problems arising from this narrow coalition? First, we see, as the governor has reflected, the lack of institutionalized parties that could have national reach. The party system in Nigeria has shifted between dominant parties with a limited base, but with few durable links to voters or communities. Think about the political parties in Nigeria, including the dominant and the ruling parties who have governed. They have changed their name, they have reorganized, they have shifted their affiliations with, again, as Governor Atta has cited, elections that are often not free and fair, and party affairs that are often not democratic. The point is that citizens and voters in many parts of the country lack a strong stake in the current system. And indeed, the parties are often transactional, as politicians compete over the distribution of rents and spoils. Political parties do not project clear ideologies or party programs. As a result, the parties do not have strong voter coalitions beyond their regional support. This gives rise to a crucial problem of exclusion. For many groups at the political margins in Nigeria, they don't have a voice through the party system or through elections to the political establishment. They don't have access to power or policy. Without fair elections, accountable legislators, or responsive party organizations, substantial groups of citizens experience political disaffection. Electoral violence and low turnout are just two symptoms of this syndrome. This leads to a second problem. The first is some of the political problems that arise from the compact of the Fourth Republic, but also the failure of development, or the shortcomings of development should be noted. There is, in the current political dispensation, a type of what I will call an elite cartel that shares government resources and rents, but it works at cross purposes with economic development. And here I want to acknowledge a long lineage of scholars and analysts who have pointed to the problem of political capture, the problem of political logic working at cross purposes with development. There's Richard Joseph and the emphasis on pre-Bendel politics, the late Professor Claude Ake, who has argued that there is a political logic that diverges from development. My own work on the comparison between some Southeast Asian countries and Nigeria that looks at the possibility of a developmental ethos in countries that are diverse, some countries that have a Muslim majority, some countries that have problems with corruption, but the possibility of development in difficult territory and difficult circumstances. Professor Utomi's many writings, but particularly his book, his recent memoir, Why Not?, which really reflects about political capture and elite politics in Nigeria, Zainab Usman's observations about political settlements and the nature of the political settlement working at cross purposes with development, and the Professor Omano Edigeji's important book, Democracy Without Development in Nigeria. Each of these authors has raised a central dilemma: the lack of a core bargain around development and broad-based prosperity. Pardon me, broad-based prosperity. I can't pronounce that. Which, as Stefan Durkin reminds us, is a crucial foundation for political change. So the simple takeaway point here is that Nigeria's shortcomings in economic development represent a core political problem. A core problem of the political class, that as the way it functions as a whole. Even with the many good people in this room who have made impressive efforts to advance Nigeria, we know that as a class and as a grouping, the political elite has not delivered. Let's recall that the Fourth Republic followed an extremely pernicious era of military rule that led to economic stagnation, global isolation, and yes, that's what I want, and a sharp rise in poverty. Some of those issues improved quickly under civilian rule. There was definitely an inflection point and a significant improvement after the dark years of the Abacha dictatorship and the arrival of a democratic dispensation. And it improved even more with the arrival of a new petroleum windfall in 2002, which opened dramatic possibilities for growth and diversification. And indeed, for a time, the country did see a reduction in external debt. It did see rapid economic growth, diminishing rates of poverty, expansion of non-oil activities in finance, in telecommunications, information technologies, media, entertainment, and we know that today Nigeria structurally, on paper, is no longer an oil economy in terms of relative output. We know that finance and ICT produce more in Nigeria in terms of national output than oil and gas. But the country still operates, obviously, in a political economy of oil and gas, which is very central to the operations of the state. And indeed, let's look to the larger truths. Because of population growth, there are more poor people in Nigeria today than there were in 2000, despite lower poverty rates. So you see the poverty rate goes from about 43% in 2000 to about 30% today, which looks very hopeful, but Nigeria is a rapidly growing country. So the population estimates are, in terms of poverty, that there were 70 million people in poverty in 2016, 88 million Nigerians in extreme poverty in 2022, and over 100 million people today. This has to be a central fact that is acknowledged and is at the core of what we are all grappling with. Because of the youth bulge, unemployment remains stubbornly high, with many estimates well over 30%. Because many of the new and promising and diversifying economic activities in Nigeria are non-tradable and they have limited employment effects, they do not contribute to wider prosperity across the country. And economic transition to manufacturing and greater rural productivity still eludes Nigeria. And of course, we've seen that after the upsurge of economic growth with the last oil windfall, we see a rapid increase in GDP per capita in the early 2000s, but then that has come down and it turned negative during the post-2015 era because of lower oil prices and weaker oil markets. Coming back just a little bit now, but still not where it was earlier in the decade. Finally, we come to the problem of stability. Let me just make one more point about the economy, that the economic downturn of the last decade has not only reduced incomes, but that government has been unable to make critical investment in infrastructure. And we know that one of the elements, without going through the full menu of problems that are familiar to many people, one of the elements is the crucial bottleneck, the binding constraint of energy, of electricity. This is the hindrance to Nigeria's forward advancement. And when other countries have unlocked this problem, the economy moves. It is the binding constraint on the Nigerian economy, and all we have seen in the last 25 years is plans, misallocated funds, and low delivery. So this is a crucial problem. So economic marginality, the low gains of economic growth has overlapped with this problem of political exclusion to fuel the sources of violence. And here we see from some World Bank figures an indicator that they used for political stability and absence of violence or terrorism. And all that this should show us is that during the Second Republic, Nigeria has remained in very low percentiles. Now, everybody here has taken a standardized exam to gain entry to school. So we know that a low percentile is not good. You want to be in the upper percentile in any relative scale. And here Nigeria has gone between 9, 7, 2, consistently low. And at the very last section, I just want to give you the contrast with where a couple...
My very good friend, I want to thank you for so many years of friendship. But I also want to congratulate you on this wonderful day because 28 years ago, when you turned 40, you gave me an opportunity to receive the baptism as a public intellectual, because we used your 40th birthday to test the waters of public debate, and we've come a long way. But of course, you have been the senior prefect in all of this, and I want to congratulate you. 68 years, not too bad, nice try, but we elders have to do what elders must do, namely to encourage their young ones. I'm sorry I'm unable to be with you physically, but as you know, emotionally I'm with you. But even more importantly, we have prayed and we pray for you for this wonderful day. But we would like to thank God for what you have accomplished and what you've meant and what you still mean to us in our country and Africa at large. We celebrate your wonderful gifts, but also most importantly that we have placed these gifts before Nigerians. And I want to assure you that your contributions have helped to shape this country in more ways than you can understand. Of course, naturally, we remain totally dissatisfied with the quality of progress that we have made, but I want to tell you that for many of us, your writings, your speeches, your energy and your strength have been a source of inspiration, but for those of us who are your seniors and those who are coming behind you. You have assembled a team of a wonderful team that will be having a conversation today. Of course, nobody would have expected anything different, because naturally we know that these are the kind of things you would do, rather than drinking champagne in some ballroom in a 5-star hotel somewhere in Lagos or Abuja. But this is you at your best. Well, I know that if we understand our country, the room will be full of people lamenting about how woefully we have performed. But I like to look ahead, one as a man of faith, but also, quite frankly, to say that in very many ways, our situation may not be as horrible as we wanted to make it look, because there are in many dimensions we have. We're not where we're supposed to be, but we've not done too badly in many respects. And I think what we should be focusing on now are the great things that lie ahead and the possibilities of achieving those things. We have a much more robust environment for politics and debate and conversation. We may be failing in the areas of physical infrastructure and other indices of progress, such as insecurity. But as we can see, and I'm sure that as the speakers, one speaker after the other will testify, there will be those who are men and women of theory, and then of course, happily you brought in 3 illustrious governors who are doing their best, and I believe that their stories will also be pointers to where the country should be going. To them, a lot has been given, and to them we expect that this country will benefit. So I think that looking ahead, the indicators, don't give us a wonderful picture. But like I said, it is possible for this country to turn the corner. We need to renew our energy. We need to renew our greater commitment. And we hope that those who are in the business of governance can also appreciate the fact that without a much more refined set of navigational tools based on serious analysis of the defects of the structure that we call Nigeria, it will be difficult for us to continue to govern by happenstance. So I want to congratulate you and thank you in anticipation for this conversation, and we hope that we'll be able to see the fruits of this conversation. And what can I say? I wish you all the best, many more years. In 2 years' time, you will be 70. But remember, I will not be standing in one spot. I will still be ahead of you because I'll be heading towards my own retirement. So once again, my dear friend, Pat, father, husband, friend, teacher, counselor, a very happy birthday. God bless you and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Bye-bye.
Okay, mine is to simply say thank you very much, and thanks immensely to my elder, senior brother, mentor, Professor Pato Twame, for the invitation. Unfortunately, I had confirmed some engagements outside of the country before now, so unfortunately I'm not able to join. I regret that. And mine is to simply, just 2-3 quick points. The first is to say a very happy birthday to you, elder brother, senior mentor, for this, happy 68th birthday. Yours has been 68 years of, how else to describe it, impactful life. Impactful life that has crisscrossed like a colossus around the country, and one that you have been involved. And I'm very excited because of this, the way you've chosen also to celebrate this 68th birthday presentation of this book. Because you've not just gone around the country speaking about the issues and the problems and the way to go, or proffering solutions, but very importantly, and I think you've led very great examples, articulating these thoughts and proposals and ideas in book form, and keep getting involved. Participation is the key. Participation. And I do urge everyone who has something to offer, intellectually, by way of activism, by way of, in whatever form, just to get involved, or you stop complaining. Because no nation, every country is a work in progress. Every society, development is a process. You never get to the end of it. But there must be constant contestations by the citizens, by various interest groups, and so on and so forth, towards a better society. And the life that you have lived, Professor Tommy, is an exemplary one, and which I recommend to all those of us who have been in public service. I have about 11 titles I've been battling with to complete writing, but someday maybe we'll get this done. And for this, the book, unfortunately, I'm not able to participate in the panel, but I look forward to being able to pick at least 200, 250 copies of this That will be my Easter gifts this period. That one, together with the one by our friend Osito Bu, maybe we'll put them in parts and circulate rather than hampers. We circulate these books. That is if people still read. Because unfortunately we're getting a new culture where people don't even open books to read. But I want to believe that it will be quite very thoughtful. I haven't had a chance to peruse through that, but I look forward to reading a copy myself. But just listening, just a quick footnote, listening to Professor Lewis and then, of course, the central cerebral Bishop Cooker, the nuggets that I could pick from those. I think the point made by Bishop Cooker is very apt. Enough of the book of Lamentations. Maybe it's now time to look at the glass half full, because all the time we're talking about what is wrong and the catalog of it. If you're a decision maker, after all the evils and so on, gloom and doom, where do we go from here? That's what a policymaker is asking for. In specific terms, what should I do? If you've got 2 minutes in front of a policymaker, he wants to know, in specific terms, what do I do to remedy this? And I think it's a big topic, very huge one, the title of the book that you have written. I remember the one when I saw the title of this, I just came up with the one that I co-edited with Paul Collier, Robert Bates, and so on, The Political Economy of Growth in Africa, for many decades, published in 2008. And I could see several of the themes coming up. But our fundamental challenge is really how we leapfrog, listening to Professor Lewis, how do we leapfrog from this predominantly transactional politics and governance into one that is transformational? And I think every society is in that spectrum at some point or the other, where they are, and the foundations that you need to have in place for this to happen. And for me, quite frankly, 2 key words that will help to connect the dots. Well, leadership is the obvious one. Everybody talks about leadership, whatever anyone means by that. But a key one that is missing, often not paid enough attention to, is institutions. Institutions. In Nigeria, more often we refer to structure as well. Because no matter how Lewis did that upgrade, to think that the 370-something, 71 or so